welcome Dr. Long to the Leaders Who Care series. We're gonna have to show them, why you deserve to be on this series. You absolutely do, but we're gonna have to, like what are they saying? Is it Kansas or Missouri? The Show Me State.
Show me state. Yeah, yeah.
But I think you'll be able to do that quite efficiently. It's great to have you here. I love what you're doing at Saybrook. And I think a great place to start would be tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll get into the business stuff in a minute, but where you're from, where you are now, your family, your much better half, because I had the opportunity to meet her. And anything else you want to talk about? Your favorite color, something you've never told anybody else that you want to reveal to the world now. It's up to you. So hit it.
I love it. Thank you, sir. It is really good to be here with you today. I've enjoyed our interactions, both the personal, informal stuff and the more formal stuff that we've had the opportunity to engage in. And, you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of synergy in the work we're doing, and look forward to talking more about the Leaders Who Care model and what we do at Saybrook and exploring that a little bit more. I don't know that I have any deep, dark secrets. I'm pretty vanilla, as they say, but, my life, really for me, we started, if you go back to the Midwest, I was born in a small town in Northwest Ohio, very rural area, to two fabulous parents. My dad was a mental health and social work oriented guy, did work for the mental health boards in Ohio at the time when mental health funding was really struggling and not all that well resourced. And my mom was a administrative executive secretary, so not a lot of money, but a lot of love, a lot of passion for service to community and caring for one another. So great, great, great upbringing, I think. Growing up in a small town was fabulous in its own right. Also had its challenges, I think, especially as I got older. But really, I think the when we look at all the things that are happening today, you and I have talked offline, right, about the division in America and the struggles we have with understanding people. I think a lot of folks just who haven't lived in small communities in the Midwest or in different pockets of the United States, getting to know those communities is so important to helping build those bridges. And having lived in those, I think, has been really helpful to me. So, my dad moved our family to a bigger town, which still a small town. And I found my way to music in that regard. I think you and I've talked a little bit about this. And the reason I gravitated towards it, I was getting mercilessly bullied in junior high. I mean, to the point where, I just really couldn't see a point. Almost not quite suicidal, but getting close to that. And a band director pulled me out and he said, "Hey, you studied with this guy when you were doing fifth grade band in Defiance, Ohio." And he said, "Why don't you start picking up the instrument again? I'll give you some lessons. We'll get you going." And that was his entree into just saying, "I'm going to take care of you because I see you're struggling and you need some help." And Paul Crosscup was his name. And he was a trumpet player in the local symphony and a jazz musician and salt of the earth kind of guy, and really took me under his wing. And I would credit him with giving me a lifeline, into a different pathway, a different future. And lo and behold, over 2, 3, 4 years, I got really good at it and started taking lessons with professional trombonists because I was a trombone player, and scored some major gigs and as a young person in an international youth orchestra, traveled Europe in my high school years, soloed with the orchestra eventually as a vocalist, because that was another area of study for me, and eventually made my way to college studying music performance, and just really loved that experience. It was powerful beyond belief to, really find that expressiveness, that creativity, that outlet for me. to give to others. It was a way for me to give something back to the world in a way, and also to keep me, I guess, out of trouble as well. I tried to stay as focused as I could. And along the way, as I got out of undergrad and moved into grad school, I started studying, did a little bit of independent work at Juilliard School in New York, and then at the conservatory in Cincinnati, and had a graduate teaching assistantship. And why that's important here is it was in housing, it was student affairs, and a lot of my work, informally, it wasn't part of the written job description, was working with young people, young men especially, many of them at risk of dropping out of college, struggling to just stay connected, be successful, finding their way forward. And suddenly things started to shift for me in terms of priorities. I love music, but being able to sit in the fire, so to speak, with students who needed help and wanted guidance, and felt that I could provide them that, not only felt really good to do, but it gave me insight into what possibly could be for a different future. And I was really on my way to being a professional classical musician, and still started playing professionally and all that. But over time, I drifted into, and eventually from part-time to full-time, into this space of higher education, administration, teaching, and became proficient in a number of different subject areas, enough to teach sociology, history of education, different types of things like that. And really fell in love with the student affairs and student support vibe, along with the academic side of things. So that's kind of the short, quick version. And then I found my way into upper administration after a short stint at Arizona State, came back to Ohio, and built a college from the ground up, and worked with this fabulous woman who was the president at the time, who really gave me, you don't get this very often in higher ed, let me tell you, where you can build something from the ground up and the president says, and you can have whatever money you want to build it. And I'm like, holy God, give it to me. Yes, this is fabulous. So I got to hire all the new faculty from all over the country. It was just really super. And we built this really, I think, beautiful program with the Nursing and Allied Health College that had this really centralized liberal arts program focusing on the human component, how to educate and create experiences for student nurses and allied health professionals that gave them a more robust grounding, not only in just topical areas like sociology or humanities through the arts, but giving them the tools to apply those in real life settings, to say these things matter not only to you, but to our community. And the story I always tell is that, and it was right before I was leaving, there was this architect. He was in the hospital, had been suffering from a really bad affliction, and one of our students started talking to him. I happened to teach us humanities through the arts class. It covered everything from music to architecture, and you name it, it was in there. And so she was taking care of him exclusively for a while. And he calls me up and he goes, I just have to tell you, because I've never had an experience in a hospital where I'm speaking to a nurse and she starts talking to me about Doric and Ionic columns, at the, like the architecture at the hospital. And then we got talking about form over substance over function. And he goes, suddenly I started feeling better. Like this person gets me and cares about me. And there was a relatability about the topical material we were talking about. Anyway, it just reinforced it, even with that small anecdote. Those pieces of material that we think are just throwaway bits of knowledge help us when we talk about caring. It gives us entryways into caring about the individual, about humanity, about expanding our worldview and our lens in a unique and different way. And then so finish that up in 2014. I decided it was time to start looking and thinking about a change, but not for sure. And happened to be a recruiter called me about
Oh
two
no.
opportunities. Yeah, I know. It was terrible, terrible, terrible. Someone like you, I mean, but um, and she mentioned Saybrook, and I knew about it through some readings in graduate school, and I'm like, huh, this is a pretty interesting place. Just from what I had known in my work in graduate education, and then started exploring it more, got into some interviews, fell absolutely in love with the faculty, the students and staff, and the mission and the passion behind what we do, that social justice focus, coupled with that humanistic approach to teaching and learning, but also to application, right? To really living your values, your principles, your mission in real time was super incredible to me.
I'm going to
And
stop you there for a
yeah,
second.
yeah,
Because that's a good place to stop. I feel like Jay Leno with Robin Williams, where Jay Leno would say, "Hey, Robin," and that's all he had to do. But that was awesome. So the reason I wanted to stop you is for a second, guys, that we'll talk about influencers later, but music plays a big part in bringing people together.
yeah,
I noticed in part of your studies, you said everything was in there. There was also history, there was peace, if I'm not mistaken, there was
yeah.
everything in there. Um, and one of the things I find that what you're talking about is, you said caring, and maybe even beyond that, they say that there's studies that have shown clearly that the thing that fills people's hearts and souls more than anything, this relates to being in the hospital, um, that more than anything is belonging. And so you got to belong by playing the instrument again in that group. That in the hospital there was belonging. That from there was belonging in being able to have all the money in the world to do what you wanted to do. That the motivation, the heart and soul of getting things done, the real people that cared enough to make that happen for you, seems to be a pretty good thread there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What a great way to kind of capture that, Mark. I mean, I think belonging is you want to belong, you want to connect, and that connection point across everything that we do is so vital to how we relate to one another, and creating those microcosms of belonging can only improve the lives we live, for sure. Yeah.
And it's a domino effect. If you remember that Clairol commercial, that one after the other type of thing. If you're looking good, you feel good. If you feel good, you're looking good, and it just keeps going.
That's right. That's right.
So no, I want to get into Saybrook a little bit, but I want to ask you this first. We founded Fifth Element actually on the basis that leaders in businesses or organizations or nonprofits can do way better when they're doing good, and it very much relates to caring. It clearly looks like you were an early believer in that premise. So can you share how partnerships and collaboration, when you've got public private partnerships, you got multiple stakeholders, which includes leaders, which includes students, which includes parents, which includes governments sometimes. How do share how you make those collaborations economically and socially viable and sustainable, while you're trying to develop, not to be cute, future leaders who care, type of thing? How do you do that?
So there's a lot to unpack there. So just stop me and we can pivot or
Sure.
take a different path. But um, I think like any institution of higher learning, one thing that you have to do is you have to fail a lot in the partnerships that you first strike first. And I know that's not always an easy piece to take on, but without that failure, you're not going to find out what doesn't work, whether it's an individual set of collaborations, whether it's the project itself, mission alignment, et cetera. But the collaborations that we have started and continued to build and sustain, the one feature piece in common, I think, and I hope this answers your question, is that for us, it's all about mission and values alignment. And if we're out of sync with that, It doesn't work. It, you know, I ended 2 partnerships early on in my tenure as president here because it wasn't that they were bad people, it wasn't that they were a bad organization. It's just they didn't hold the same sort of value set that Saybrook had, and it wasn't working for them either, right? So it was better for us to part ways in a friendly fashion. What I would say also is that, so along with mission and values alignment, is that where we have found resonance, whether that's with how we recruit students, how we support them along the way, it is that commitment, that ironclad ongoing commitment to mutual beneficial engagement. So in other words, when I meet with a partnership entity or when I meet with a student, it's what do you expect of us? And here's what you can expect for sure. So we're aligned. And here's what we expect of you. So there's a mutuality of expectation and also excitement around what could be, what the possibility is. And it sets the groundwork, the table for, if you will, a powerful opportunity. And I think a lot of colleges and universities, I don't want to be critical here. I'm just going to say a lot of it's one way. So if we're looking at a collaboration with an organization, it's this is what we'll give to you and you're going to love it. You're going to love every aspect of it. And I've often found, especially in my early days, that most businesses and organizations will say, yeah, that's not what we're looking for. What can you do for us? And the other question is, what can you do for the college or the institution? It's a mutual exchange. And I think that creates the best opportunity, best potential for success when you're aligned in that. And I think it goes everywhere from, the student to the faculty member you're hiring to the staff member you're hiring, all the way through those collaborations that you set up. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like an expression we use a lot, that clear is kind is the best thing you can do.
Bam. Right. That is, yeah, very much so. Yeah. And I think, if we're not being clear, we're not serving ourselves, nor are we serving the entity involved, or the individual involved. We just started, it's interesting you brought this up. Our admissions team approached me about 9 months ago and said, do you be willing to host like a chat with new students? And I'm like, absolutely. I'd love that. It'd be fabulous. And I put these slides in that exactly speak to this. So one slide is my responsibility, our responsibilities to you. The next slide was your responsibilities to us. And a bunch of the students who I've talked to since then said, that made total sense to me. I wish previous institutions would just do that, because it's like, oh, show up to class, ask for help, don't be afraid to ask questions. Can seem like an obvious thing, but when you're giving permission to engage and to create new opportunities going forward. Anyway.
I find it's I compare a lot of things to sports, as we've talked, but even
Sure.
kids, if you're clear as a coach and the player knows you believe in them no matter what, and so stand up for them, and you're clear when they make a mistake because they know where you're coming from. That's the kindest thing you can do, to make a mistake.
Yeah.
You put them back on the ice or the field, that player will do anything for that coach because he's clear as what's going on. And it's not about how much money they make to win championships. That's not motivating them to win the championship.
No.
The coach and the fans and their teammates are motivating them to win the championship. So it's not rocket science. For some reason, it is for some, but it does work. The fourth industrial revolution is about technology, AI, VR, a whole bunch of stuff going on. And they say the fifth is about humanity. And you brought up humanity before. It's partially where our name comes, fifth element. So your commitment to education, and there's 2 parts here, from half to handling as president, the financial and operational sides of everything, and a really unique curriculum at Saybrook. I believe offers what clearly seems to be the most important, and I quote, like, the people in the process is to make your school thrive so that educators can educate. And so that it's like the general manager or president of the team lets the coach just coach, not have to worry about anything else, so he can coach and let the teachers and the professors educate. Can you elaborate why and how Saybrook's offering attracts special professors, special students, and give some experiences and examples of accomplishments?
There are like 100,000 I could give you, but I'll try and be brief here. And I was heading in that direction, and I think this is what stands out to me about what drew me to Saybrook is its special. I'll call it a special mission, because a lot of times in higher ed institutions, and I'm guilty of this in previous institutions, we have an amazing mission and we're different and we're special. At Saybrook, that I think is absolutely true. And that isn't always true at other places. We live our mission and we embody our mission, Um, and I think the to your point, it's saying it's different than seeing it in action, right? So good case in point is I just got back from a fabulous trip yesterday or this past week, meeting with several alumni, uh, all of whom are doing incredible work. One is working with rehoming homeless folks in the San Francisco Bay Area and finding ways to get them to where they need to be holistically and helpfully. Another woman is working with, through her organization, she heads up a nonprofit doing substantial work in supporting women who are affected by homelessness, by violence in their community and their home, and helping them get back on their feet and finding the services that they need. Still, yet another woman who's an alum of ours has been doing really critical work in Kenya on the ground with individuals there, with the government, to support a more sustainable approach or approaches to living, learning, etc. That was just on Tuesday. And I called my wife and I said, I've been in this job for 9 years, and it's not I'll literally say it's not a darn thing that I do, Mark, that makes me like, oh, I'm amazing. I am so inspired by the students and our alumni who are doing this exact thing. And there are countless stories of students who live our mission. And it's not just about, it's not a political orientation or it's a value set that says, I care about humanity. I care about you. I care about us as a society. And I think that really emphasizes to me, and hopefully to your audience, that those 3 or 4 examples are just excellent points about living and breathing that humanistic social justice mission in a powerful way.
Sounds like you got a bunch of leaders who care over there.
A lot of leaders who care. Absolutely. Yes.
And it's interesting what you say about you went home and told your wife about it. And what we find a lot also is when people come home from their work or school or whatnot, they come home and 2 things can happen. They can say, man, that sucked. It was boring.
Yep.
Works this, works that. I hate my school, whatever type of thing. We're not doing anything useful. And either the spouse or partner and or their kids hear that. Or they come home and they say, hey guys, we got to get together. I got to tell you what happened, type of thing. Just like you were just telling me about these people. And it's a great thing about this, great thing about that. And the kids or the spouse or partner hear that. And you want to talk about sustainable improvement or whatever you want to call it. The kids will make decisions. It's going to stay in their mind how their parents came home and talked about that, or maybe how the kids came home to the parents talked about it. Also, that's really important. So it's so intertwined how impact and humans come together to really make things happen. I want to ask more about the curriculum points you raised. How important what you're talking about is for leaders to care about the well-being of whomever, whether it's students, parents, employees, or whatnot. And well-being is financial, physical, and mental. Mental being a big one these days. Give us more of your thoughts on the direct real-life impact of your courses and how it does flow to communities and families.
Yeah, sure. So, I think we do need to start about creating a sustainable organization first to foster that work, right? So Saybrook is in that sphere of nonprofit private universities, right? And so the hard work that we've been through as an institution was really resetting the priorities around what is it we want to do? How are we going to pay for it? How are we going to ensure that our faculty and our staff are compensated fairly, equitably, and feel good about what they're getting compensated? And then and probably most importantly, how do we sustain and grow the curriculum in a way that maintains its fidelity to the mission, to the values of the institution? So I think that that's been front and center for us over the last or previous 6 years or so. We're in this really exciting growth phase right now. And I think part of that has been about us leaning into that humanistic element, both in our curriculum and in the co-curricular activities that we do with our graduate students. And so I would say, Mark, that the most important thing about us is the curriculum. It needs to live, it needs to breathe, it needs to expand and evolve with the times. And our faculty are known not just around the world for their expertise in this area, but also their ability to practice. And so it's read, show, do kind of approach to learning at the graduate level, which is quite beautiful, right? So our students can see in real time how that's actualized. Do we always get it right? Absolutely not. I mean, if we got it
You're
right all the
actually
time,
human.
yeah, imagine that. But we've been growing and becoming, I think even more vibrant over the years. And most recently, we've started to embrace more wholly. I think we've always embraced diversity, equity, and inclusion values to a degree, but I think leaning in with greater authenticity, care, and commitment to that across our leadership. And our leadership has to walk that walk and talk the talk, as well as our faculty and our students working together to say, it's okay to say, hey, what isn't working about your learning experience? And by modeling that to students who can say, oh, it's okay to ask the question about what's not working. But how can you do that in a way that says, I see you, I care about you. This isn't about ripping down walls and tearing people down. It's about building people up together. And the curriculum piece around innovation and supportiveness around evolving it, I think is a role modeling opportunity for leaders, for faculty members who care and give students that capacity building to help them into their own future professions.
Yeah, no, that's actually fantastic. And you mentioned in diversity, and yesterday was International Women's Day, as a
Yep.
matter of fact, and this is the month. And we were actually launched on International Women's Day 5 years ago
Oh, that's cool.
at the UN headquarters, and um, we engage every search we do, every project we do is diverse by intent, but not because, but because there's so much value in diversity in the first place.
Yes.
Um, the obvious ones, race, gender, whatnot, but also expertise, experiences, ideas, things like that. And you mentioned not being afraid to ask. That's part of what you want to have happen from diversity. Ask why this, why that, etc. Part of what I love is you're kind enough to host this whole non-flict event, which is about how to look at conflict differently and not like you hate each other, but you can listen to the other people and learn and ask questions, etc. All that's we should be wanting. That's embraceable, big time.
Yeah.
To that. So I want to ask, how do you describe how you've seen multiple types of diversity be valuable in your education journey, number one, but also for educators and students to put everybody in a better position to do amazing things?
I think the best way to put it, and I can't remember the name of the individual. I think it was a business CEO that made the point that the more diverse his team was, the more profitable the business was, the happier the people were, and the more impact they had in the community. And I wish for the life of me I could remember who this person was, but that has always sort of rung true. And I read him back in graduate school. And I would say that the first piece around that is that, with all the talk around wokeism and this, that, and the other now, and how political we've gotten, the brass tacks behind all of this is that we're better because of each other, racial, ethnic, gender, across the board, differences, the things that bring us together, and different ideas, support a better, more thriving economy, business, organization. And I think we've lost our way a little bit in trying to get to that point of like, this should be about who we are as a nation, about who we are as a state, region, and a country. Because in every environment where, and this is, I had mentioned earlier, right, that I grew up in a small town, very, very homogenous, right? All white, largely Christian, in fact, all Christian, generally Protestant and Catholic, maybe a few. Um, Beyond that, that was my only experience. When I went to the university, it got a little bit bigger. And then when I got into graduate school at a more urban campus, oh my God, it was just incredible. The amount of interface between international students and faculty and business folks and local talent of all races, of all creeds and ethnicities. And I became a better human because of it, I believe. It made me think about what I was saying and doing more critically, and helped me grow and help me learn how to actually be more empathic or empathetic, and kinder, but also more focused on how do we mobilize each other, our strengths, to work for the common good. And so I would say at each step along the way, that has been a core value that I have seen embraced, and other leaders value, not because they're filling a number, but because they believe this is how we're going to advance together. And it's really been infused in my work. Again, I think it goes back to the point. Do we always get it right? No. Do we always, do we make mistakes? Do I make mistakes? Absolutely. But if you're not willing to step into, we have a faculty member says, sitting in the fire, stepping into the fire. And I love that metaphor, really. If you're not willing to step and sit into the fire and really try and work through this and make some of the mistakes, but also learn and grow, then maybe you're not as much a leader who cares, right? Or you have a lot more growth to do, because I think you're going to make better decisions and have more success collectively, communally, by doing that. And I hope that answers your question. But
Yeah. And I add one point to it. If you don't have diverse ideas, then it means you all have the same ideas. And where is that going to go?
right, right. And it's, sociology 101, right? It's groupthink. It starts to just converge. And so it helps you get out of that echo chamber for sure.
No, I love it. Well, in LA, we say, keep them wanting more so we can do the sequel. So I only have one question left, and we'll do the sequel.
That's a great one.
So one client told me in 2021, he talked to me, he said, the year 2020 was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought that was a great line when he told me that. And it's still, the last few years have been weird, especially that one year, 2020. It seemed like it was yesterday and so long ago, in a way, all at the same time.
Ancient history and yet yesterday. Yeah,
Very strange. And with that, can you tell me what you're most grateful for, and then also what you're most hopeful for?
Well, those are great questions. So I think right now, what I am most grateful for in my life and in the things that surround me, really has to be the limitless potential that we have as a society. And I'm talking more globally, because I think now more than ever, I mean, I know there's a lot of talk about who's doing it, but just think about the fact that we are now literally talking about how to get to Mars, how to eradicate certain diseases, how we're so close. For example, just 3 days ago, they came out with the news about obesity being totally eliminated due to drugs. Now, I know there's things we have to talk about, but the mere fact that we're talking about that right now, that's exciting to me. And it gives me hope for my kids, for my family, for our families, about what's possible. And so I think, in terms of, I'm grateful for that. And I think in the same way, it gives me tremendous hope for the future, that human ingenuity, especially when we, take off the constraints and let people live and be and work together and think out loud and innovate. It's limitless potential. So that's what I'm grateful and hopeful for.
No, well said. And so I think you have shown pretty clear that you are a leader who cares. So I'm
Oh,
grateful for
thank you.
that, for sure, and getting to know you and whatnot, and your wife and your family. It's fantastic. It is going to be very hot
Likewise.
in Palm Springs, by the way. And but thank you so much for sharing all that and all you're doing, and we look forward to great things ahead.
Mark, great time with you. Thank you.